This is Koda Radio, episode 583, recorded on August 13th, 2024. Hey friend, welcome in to Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and the business of software development and the world of technology. My name is Chris, and joining us over there, cleaning his weapon of choice, it's our host, Mr. Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Hello, hello.
Hello, sir. You know, I've been watching the Google presentation this morning, because as we record, Google just wrapped up. And I'm a little whelmed. You know, I'm not underwhelmed. I'm not overwhelmed.
You're just whelmed.
I think they said Gemini about every 30 seconds. But they kind of made the Pixel 9 look pretty nice. I got to say, they've upped their design game a little bit. And they packed 20% more battery life in there, and supposedly the thing runs a little cooler. And Mike, they said something up on stage that was like a glass of cold water to a man in a desert. They said, "We have heard you, that you want to be able to buy a smaller screen phone with all the pro features." So, you know, they're going to have like a really big XL unit, but the main, you can get a Pixel Pro like with the same camera and everything. Everything's the same spec, just in a smaller version, which is still like 6.3 inches. Still pretty big. But you get the fast screen. They call it the Actua displays with 120 hertz. They're putting in a satellite SOS on all of them, 16 gigs of RAM, and 45-watt fast charging. And the same camera array across the two units. So I'd love to see become a trend. I'm ready to downsize my phone a little bit. I don't know about you.
I'm still rocking my 14 Pro Max. You know what? It's my happy place right now. I just don't see a need to upgrade or switch.
I'm not sure if I'm going to upgrade, but when I do, like I guess say, God forbid something happened and I left my phone on the roof of the car and took off, I think I'd go for a smaller screen this time, if I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, my big hurdle is the 2FA stuff. It's just such a pain in the butt.
Yes.
And I think last year I had a nightmare with that. So
I'm currently going through a nightmare because I stayed on Authy for far too long. And Authy no longer has, as of like a month ago, no longer has a way to export. So I have to manually go to every freaking service and site, sign in two-factor, disable two-factor, so you two-factor again to disable two-factor, and then turn two-factor back on. So I'm just slowly doing that. I don't know. That's what I'm working on in the meantime. Following the crazy car patents seems to be a hobby of mine, and I saw this story that Ford has filed for a new patent to automatically snitch on speeders. Gonna love this. This is a recent patent filing by Ford titled, quote, "Systems and Methods for Detecting Speeding Violations." It appears to show that the company is looking for ways to automatically snitch on speeding motorists. It has a series of sketches and flowcharts. And of course, it all has these like different little boxes on. But anyways, it all demonstrates a system that senses speed violations, activates cameras to take pictures, and then transmits the data to a nearby pursuit vehicle, or can log it to a server for action later. The captured data includes the speed, the GPS location, and a clear image or video that can be sent to authorities for potential action.
Ford, your partners in taxation.
Remember how we covered, I don't know, last year, or 6 months ago, whatever it was, they had a patent to drive the car back to the dealership when you don't make your payment?
Yeah.
And now we have this. Now, Ford says, well, look, we're only going to put this in the Interceptor class vehicles, so you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be like cop cars now are going to become, even when there's no cop in there, like a speed violation detector. But I call BS on this PR line from Ford because I know how Ford works. Having, family members and myself that have owned Fords over the years, Ford builds these things into certain models, and then as the cost of building these comes down, economies of scales kick in, it becomes cheaper for Ford to just standardize the parts across the entire lineup. This is why my wife's Ford Focus has buttons for things that the car can't even do, this trim can't even do. But they'll standardize it. So like the SE trim always gets this set of sensors and this set of camera and this set of compute. It becomes cheaper for Ford to do it this way. It makes it simpler for Ford's installation this way. And over the long term, nothing prevents this from just ending up in every Ford, perhaps just not activated, but the hardware is there, the compute is there. And then, you get one legal request Maybe, you know, the FBI or your local police department or whoever, the IRS, shows up at the dealership and says, did Mr. Fisher buy an F-150 from you in 2026 here? Yes, sir, Mr. IRS agent, he did. Good. We need you to activate these features for us. We have a warrant.
Well, I could even see a more dystopian version of that.
Really? Oh, yeah. God. What is it?
This is such a revenue machine for police, right? For local municipalities.
For sure.
That they start issuing incentives and tax breaks to Ford. Or maybe even, you know, safety. I could see insurance companies, because this is a wet dream for them, right? Their big challenge is, right, the whole actuary process they go through, finding the risky drivers without complete data. I could see, you know, your Geicos of the world saying, oh, well, your car detected you were speeding 2 days last week, and your renewal is coming up next month. So we're going to have to go ahead and add trying to kind of risk adjust your premium.
This is starting to happen. So I just read a story last week that newer Corollas and newer Toyotas, unless you download the Toyota app, create an account, pair it to your car and add the VIN, add that to your Toyota account, and then go into the app and implicitly decline all of the cloud features, the new Toyotas will be tracking your speed and selling it to the insurance companies.
Yep.
They're covering all kinds of metrics like acceleration, hard braking, all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, now twice, in a recent model Corolla, the engine has caught on fire in two different guys' Corollas, two different incidences, two different places in the world. These engines caught on fire while they're going down the freeway. One of them even was on camera. And Toyota has the ability to detect that they were doing 85 miles per hour and has declined any warranty work on these vehicles on the grounds that they were doing 85 miles per hour, which is complete horse crap, especially because these were performance model Corollas. It's an amazing kind of like leap that we found ourselves in just all of a sudden. We've gone from, if you'll pardon the pun, 0 to 100 on this issue, where now they know at the moment of incident, they know exactly where you were at, exactly what speed you were doing, and they can and the amazing little BS line they're using is, well, the tires that we put on there weren't rated for 85 miles per hour, so therefore you're violating the warranty.
All the financial incentives for the big players here say, get me more data.
And the end users are kind of left completely unaware. These guys didn't know Toyota was monitoring this stuff on their cars until they tried to get something fixed. Now, I think one of them, they legitimately had other engine issues. I don't know if it was actually manufacturing fault. So I don't know if Toyota was actually at fault. But either way, the line is ridiculous that, 85. Now that we can tell what you're doing and you're going outside. And there's only one sentence in the entire owner's manual that talks about not going 85 miles per hour. And it's the section about the tires. Nothing else in the manual says you can't go 85 miles per hour. But they can pull that out because they have that data now. And now, here you have Ford, cameras and sensors and compute. They're all coming down. I think I agree with Wes. It's probably like a lot of it won't work great. So there's that. We have that solace is a lot of it won't work great. But you have to imagine the data collection. If we get clear images and we collect the data, it can be processed later on with more advanced, more functional tools. My little town here, where the studio is at, has LTE-connected solar cameras. And they're kind of bulky, so you can see them plain as day. And I've looked up the company that deploys these. They're a private company, and they come to the local police office or the local mayor's office or whatever, and they say, look, these cameras pay for themselves because you don't have to run any infrastructure. They're on LTE. They provide their own power. And we'll just start collecting license plates using our AI image technology is what they say.
Yep.
And we'll collect the license plates of everybody that comes and goes from your town. And if you ever need to look it up, we've got a portal. You can provide payment, tell us the information you want, and then we'll deliver to you as a PDF. And you can have at it.
So this reminds me of a very old case back in Jersey, in the county I lived in when I went to college, of the red light cameras were the new hotness, right? The absolute cutting edge of driver enforcement. And there was some question of, is that actually legal in New Jersey? Shocker, it was ruled legal. But it turns out if people see the cameras, guess what they do?
They slow down?
They stop at yellow.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they don't want to get caught.
Sure.
Or they speed, right? Or they fly through the yellow. So some very clever bureaucrat got the idea. Well, I know we have all the yellow timers set the same, but what if for this one major intersection, we half the timer on the yellow? So therefore, it's a red light. We could take the picture, send the ticket. All of a sudden, they're generating boku bucks. But a lot of people are saying, I could have sworn the light would just turned yellow. I should have been fine, right?
Oh, man.
Finally, they get the wrong person. And I might be wrong. It's the sister or a wife of a police officer who, and her husband or brother, I don't remember what the relationship was like, yeah, there might be something fishy going on there, but it saves us a lot of time and money. They end up hiring, she ends up at her expense, going through and hiring professional traffic engineers to like do a survey, run a bunch of tests.
Amazing.
And they reveal that somehow this one intersection was halved in time. Why did no one complain before? Well, the running a red light ticket was roughly $500. But your friendly prosecutor, who really doesn't want to go to trial on stupid traffic stuff, right? Because, it's the traffic prosecutor. He's literally 2 days out of law school. He doesn't give a says, tell you what, if you take this plea, there'll be no points, and it's like, $250 instead of $500. But you got to take the plea and say you're guilty and blah, blah, blah. Say you're sorry, right? Pay the fine. So, like, hundreds of people just paid the $250, took the plea. Their insurance goes up, like, yada.
Dude,
yeah.
Here in Washington State, they now give you the option to just add your debit card so they can just auto-debit you when you violate the traffic camera.
It's wild. My point with that is that was one bureaucrat, right, trying to, let's say, optimize for the technology. It's incredibly naive to think that that's not going to happen again. And not to be devil's advocate, but a lot of these municipalities are under tremendous financial pressure. And they need money. So I guess
that's the question, is if somebody is breaking the law, is it okay to automate enforcement? I'd like the audience to boost in on that, because I, as somebody who likes to skirt on the edge, feel like when it comes to traffic enforcement, there needs to be a gray area, because maybe there's a truck, maybe something happened and you're swerving into a different lane, or maybe you have to stop too hard because you're in a 25,000-pound RV, so instead of slamming on the brakes, you kind of coast through a stale yellow. Like, there's a lot of flexibility there, but I do hear what you're saying, Mike. Steel manning this a little bit. You're right. They're under tremendous pressure. Tax revenues are likely to go down. Yep. And they need the revenue from somewhere to keep services up. And if it's automatically getting you for, if you're clearly breaking the law, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not the evilest form of government implementation, but I still don't like it for some reason.
It really isn't, right? I mean, I don't like this idea because I feel the abuse coming. But you know what? I live in a pretty swanky part of Florida. And there's a lot of rich, frankly, white boys, high school kids that love to drag race effectively down because we have a straight drag in town.
Yeah, oh yeah, that night I can hear people racing and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and last week one of them wrapped their car around a tree because he lost control. And like an idiot is posting it on social media. The reason I'm mentioning this because I'm in the community group. Some relative of his was complaining that, and I couldn't believe it. The police came and said, by the way, we knew you were racing because you said you were racing on Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
And he posted it in this, I guess they have a group for all the racers, the teen racers, and they have an undercover cop in there. Because, of course, he tries to say, oh, I hit some debris. Try to make up a story why he wrapped his car around a tree. But I wouldn't mind if a automated traffic system got his parents, a couple $1,000s of tickets to maybe force him to behave.
Huh. You know what I dream of? I dream of a funding system where the government says, okay, Mr. Fisher, based on your taxes, we've allocated, you can allocate X amount of your tax dollars to these different initiatives. And I log into the secure website and I vote on different government initiatives, and that allocates in percentage where my tax dollars go. Because raising funds by giving me a ticket, that's just going to lead to drones surveilling us all the time. That just goes to the max dark place if that's the way they monetize. You know what I mean? So there's room for it, but I prefer to be more like an aid to legal action, not the cause of legal action. I don't know. I don't know why one creeps me out more than the other, I suppose. It's a tough spot. And I think it's a question that we're probably going to see, I would imagine, like these private surveillance cameras here in my little town, it's probably going to be something that we'll see go way too far in one direction before there's any kind of corrective action.
I wouldn't be shocked if you see it in like low tax states like Florida, where, one disadvantage of Florida, of living in Florida, is because there's no income tax here. The government's always forced, the state government and the counties are forced to find creative ways to effectively tax you, right? But not call it that.
Koda.show/boost. The Koda Radio program is an audience-funded program, and we like it that way because it lets us stay unique. The reality is, if we come on the show and we don't have the same take as the other podcasts, that makes us a unique listen. We think it's actually one of our strengths. However, it means we get pulled from being featured in the Apple podcast directory when we say something bad about Apple. It's actually happened in the run of the show before. It means when we don't necessarily think the biggest boom and the biggest bubble is the next best thing since sliced bread, we're not as attractive to some sponsors that might want to promote and pump that new bubble and maybe sell a new product in there. We don't look very attractive when we say something that's considered a little political, even if we think it might be true, and in the long term, it generally proves out to be accurate. Those things make the Koda program unique and different than all the other tech podcasts. It makes it hard for sponsors to want to engage and support a show that has that unique perspective, but audiences love it because, at least I hope, we're putting words to something you've thought before. We're representing your perspective, and that's where the boosts are such a great fit. There's no middleman. There's no company that can just kind of decide they don't want to work with us anymore. There's nobody that can rug us and say, hey, now we have to charge 30% more fees. None of that can happen because it is a peer-to-peer open source network. Market dynamics keep the fees really low. And when you boost us, it goes directly from your wallet through that peer-to-peer network into our wallet. I don't have to go request the money every 30 days from a big corporation. Please, sir, may I have my funding? It comes in as you support us, which means we can either choose to stack it or spend it, whatever we might need to do with it to keep the operation going. It's really powerful, and you can do it on your schedule with your amount as you please. You just go to Koda.show/boost. Now, you want to set it on autopilot? We appreciate that too, and as a thank you, we'll give you some bennies like the Coderly and an ad-free feed if you want to go to Koda.show/membership. Put your support on autopilot and get the bennies as a result too. As a way, we can just say thank you. We appreciate it either way. If you boost in, we'll read your message on the show. And if you become a member, we'll kick you back those benefits. It's a great way to support the show, keep us independent, and keep the show going, too. Koda.show/boost and Koda.show/membership. So Bloomberg and IT Pro are running a story today about a little AI startup. And the framing of the story is that perhaps we've been way too focused on ChatGPT and Gemini and Apple Intelligence or whatever, and instead we should have been more focused on small LLMs. They're looking at Ary AI. I think it's Ary because the name, it's based on a Transformer character. And Mark McQuaid seems to be the guy running the startup. He co-founded it last year, and he's helping companies train purpose-built LLMs, a thinner approach to AI, they say. And they say rather than trying to do everything ChatGPT can, Ary software helps accomplish a more limited set of day-to-day corporate tasks, like building a service that only fields tax-related questions, for example, without requiring as much data. Quote, I say 99% of business use cases, you probably don't need to know who won an Olympic gold medal in 1968, McQuaid says. And here's some interesting details. Ary AI raised $24 million in Series A last month. They demoed a small model that can answer tax questions for Thomas Reuters and built a career coach chatbot for Guild, which is an upskill company. Both those companies run this whole thing up on Amazon's web services. So these guys built purpose-built models for them and essentially, packaged it up onto AWS and gave them, a UI and said, here you go. And that got them $24 million. Anyways, we could have done that. You, me, and Wes in an afternoon. But anyways, okay.
God damn it.
I know. So anyways, the Guild folks say they love it. They had their in-house folks test it against ChatGPT, and 90% of the time they liked it more. They expanded it to the users. The users liked it more. And of course, they trained it on all the chat conversations they've had with their customers, between the coaches and the users over the years. They just immediately hand that data over. Here you go. But it brings to light a problem. And this is the one I want to talk about on the show. couple of problems. One is we don't really have a definition for what the hell a small model is. We're still trying to sort all this stuff out. But there's no clear definition of a, quote, small model. Some suggest that anything that's 70 billion or fewer parameters is small. So that would make, take like Meta's Llama AI model. It has 3 sizes. One is, ranges from 8 billion. So I guess that'd be considered quite small. All the way up to 400 billion. So I guess that wouldn't be considered small. I don't really know. If anybody has any ideas, send them in. But, for the sake of conversation, we'll say anything with 70 billion fewer parameters is considered a small model. And the other problem I think we have, problem number 2, is like Linux distributions, only more so, and like cryptocurrencies, only more so, there are a lot of LLMs, a lot of them. I checked on Hugging Face this morning, and there are 827,889 different models.
Oh, wow.
I think it's because it shows that there's a core problem that actually Red Hat has tuned into and has a very comprehensive solution. And I remember, if you recall, I was at Red Hat Summit a few months ago. And what they identified, and I think they're right, and I think you look at the numbers on Hugging Face, I think it shows this. People want to modify these LLMs. They want to change them. Maybe they want to uncensor them. Maybe they want to make them medical experts. Maybe they want to make them an expert on a particular topic. They want to tweak the model somehow, and they want to create their own LLM. And the fundamental problem is, of course, you can't contribute back up to Meta's core model, just like you can't contribute back up to Gemini. They don't allow contributions to the base model. It's open source, kind of, sort of. It's not open source like your dad's open source. So since none of these improvements, all these different forks essentially are on Hugging Face, they don't make it back to the base model. They're not really perpetuating a permanent solution because you have to keep using fork on top of fork. Red Hat figured out that they could solve this by creating something called InstructLab. And the idea is that you start with like an open source LLM. They open sourced the IBM Granite model, for example. And you generate like a purpose-focused large language model for a specific task. And if you don't like what it says, you can go through and retrain the model based on your data. And so you're creating the core model there. So, for example, maybe you train it on HR data or you train it on support data. And if they don't like the answers they're getting back when they're doing their beta tests, you go back into InstructLab, you tweak the data, you conversate with the model, you do a correction, and then you retrain. And then you can distribute. They have a whole pipeline for this. You can then distribute that LLM to different workstations or servers, clouds, even MacBooks. You can distribute it around your company, or you can distribute it to one instance that people use. And your IT can manage it, and you can make sure it follows all your best practices and all your policies. And they're not these giant models like ChatGPT that know the Olympic scores. They know, like how many Susies you've hired in the last 5 years, or they know how many people called in with broken XYZ. But that seems really useful.
Right.
And you can't do it with large models because they require too much horsepower. It's just beyond the reach of an average business. So it seems to me, when you look at how good these things are getting, and the tooling that companies like Ary and Red Hat are building, I think 2025 is going to be the year of the small language models. Mini AI is what they're going to call it, or something like that. Well, we spent all this year talking about ChatGPT and Gemini, but I think next year it's going to be the little guys. And I'll double down on that if you'll let me. Here's why I think it's also most likely, Mr. Domit. I'll make this quick. I think September, or a little bit after September, before the end of the year, the rates are coming down.
Ooh.
And you're going to start seeing investments broaden out. They call it oscillate. They're going to oscillate from the high caps to the low caps, right? What they're going to do is they're going to start investing in small AI companies now because the rates are going to be coming down. So they don't all have to ape into NVIDIA. They're going to start having their small cap play is what they'll call it. And that combined with just this market pressure to use smaller LLMs and to make them domain specific, I think it's going to make for the year of the mini AI.
It could be. And also the idea of self-hosting it, I think, will be attractive to a lot of enterprises in particular.
Yeah, and you're not going to be self-hosting some giant LLM.
No, it's too big.
So look around. I don't know, go invest and then boost in your proceeds. Boost in a percentage of your proceeds. Not financial advice, but it just seems like you look at the explosion on Hugging Face, you look at all these people trying to solve this problem, And all of these companies are out there talking about AI for consumers. That's what Google was talking about today. That's what Apple focused on. Microsoft really leaned heavily into Copilot. But Red Hat's the one talking about AI for businesses. And that's where it seems like it's way more useful for organizing, say, Linux Fest. Most weeks, I cannot attend the nightly meeting, but I would absolutely read an AI summary report, if it got mailed to me. There's so many things at work that something that's just capable of transcription and sentiment analysis can solve. If a phone call between you and a coworker could then get transcribed and attached to like the meeting afterwards with the key points extracted, 5 key points from our conversation just immediately appended to the meeting notes, to the calendar notes, that immediately gets useful. There's an entire range of stuff from domain expertise on your product, your company, your customers, to just making interaction with your coworkers, especially as those of us that are remote, more efficient. I think that's a way bigger market than generating funny pictures that are, it's a big market too, I suppose. Funny pictures is probably a pretty big market, actually. I'll take that one back. But I do think business is just filled with opportunity. All right. You want to get into this Sequoia stuff?
Let's do it.
Wow. I think we're at the phase of product development at Apple where clearly people that don't use the product or have never used their competitors' products are making decisions. Well, Sequoia looks like it's it, man. This is the line. And I'm not even kidding. I've already been really resistant to update my Macs. The one Mac we have in the studio is on macOS Monterey 12.4. I'm already slowing down my roll a lot on this, but this is it. This is it. This is the line I cannot cross. There's 2 big changes that just landed in recent Sequoia betas that indicate to me that the fears we always had of Apple slowly cracking down over time were absolutely justified. Let's start with the most annoying. You've probably heard by now, macOS Sequoia is adding a weekly permissions prompt to anything that gets the screenshot or screen recording permission. And this is a very common permission for a lot of Mac apps for a lot of stupid reasons, including, like the third-party screenshot apps like CleanShot X, which are a lot better. But now every single week and after every reboot, you're going to have to authorize these things.
Yeah, that's what I need. More pop-ups.
More pop-ups, dude. More annoying pop-ups and making it harder on developers. Even apps that are using the Screen Capture Kit API are going to face this permissions challenges. I have to imagine Apple will walk this back because developers are really trying to light a fire under this one. It's very frustrating. And here's the one that we always knew was coming. And again, going to affect me directly, and it's a line too far. Sequoia is going to make it even harder to run apps that don't get notarized by Apple. So in the past, if you right-clicked on a non-notarized app and you said open, it might say, hey, this is a scary app. Are you sure you want to continue? Okay, go ahead. There were ways where you could open and run non-notarized software on macOS without having to beg and plead. But not with Sequoia. They're taking away that option. You will now have to navigate to system settings to do overrides, and basically there's no other option. Apple's response is, well, you should get your app signed. You should make that a priority if you don't want this problem. That's what the solution is. It's radically upsetting to me. This is a lot of the apps I use are not notarized. They're open source. They're free software, and they're just putting them up on GitHub.
It's really. The funny thing is, I didn't know about the control click to bypass it, so I've been doing it the long way through settings anyway. But it really is starting to feel like, and we have our next story regarding Apple that really, I think, hits this even harder, that they want a shekel every time you click a button. And they want to enforce that. They just want massive control over the hardware you buy from them.
I guess the positive spin on this is, hey, they've been slowly turning up the heat. You've known this is coming. And they did it slow enough to be gentle with you. And now there's this line where you can, decide if you want to cross it or not. But the flip is, I don't know if we've really demonstrated this system is particularly useful. And while I don't necessarily mind having notarized apps, it hasn't substantially improved my macOS experience. when I've used it. And so I don't see the data that supports going even further with this system. To me, it's harder to justify it, but they're going to justify it as a security thing, which, of course, like you said, is really also a way for them to get their shekel. And this is what brings me back to Linux with this kind of stuff. Like, I have a MacBook Pro M1 Max. It's a very nice machine, still very good machine. But software management in general, just software on macOS, is worse than Windows Vista now. You know, on Linux, you generally have a single tool, maybe two, to manage all of the software, all of the updates. You get to engage with that on your terms, your schedule, when you want. You're not getting a bunch of frickin' notifications or pop-ups. You know, a dozen different ways these apps implemented on macOS. And here's the other reality. On average, on Linux, the updates improve the system. But that is not the case on macOS. But even more importantly, my tools, my critical tools, always require major upgrades with every macOS every year.
Yep.
Linux doesn't have anything like this. I mean, there's times where like Pulse Audio changes to Pipewire or X11 changes to Wayland. But we're talking one subsystem at a time every few years. It's not nearly as dramatic. So and then like, okay, last desktops like Plasma and Cosmic and others, they do things that make you more productive out of the box than macOS. Like with macOS, you need like $100 to $200 of a budget to buy third-party apps to make macOS as functional as Plasma is out of the box. And then you combine things like the M series are still not super great at 4+ screens, where that's just fine on Plasma, and there's tooling to make sure the applications of Windows always open on the right screen. I mean, macOS has really slid into Vista territory here, and now we've got full UAC prompts. We've got weekly screenshot reminders. There's no point where I can, at least in their current implementation, where I can say, this is my tool, this is my machine, and I am fine with this. Do not bother me again. It's no longer my computer anymore. It's Apple's computer, and I'm an end user of it. I don't know. I find it extremely frustrating, and for somebody who's trying to get work done, I want a tool that is mine, that I own, that I can say, you'll do updates now, not when you want to, when I want to. My tools will run for 3 years before I have to make a major upgrade. I want something like that, because in the real world, I'm not tuning in to every event, getting hyped about every new Mac, buying it and immediately upgrading. That's not how businesses work. That's not how people actually do things in the real world. It's how maybe some tech geeks do. But that's how like the Apple ecosystem operates. I mean, I'm over here, like I mentioned earlier, on frickin' Monterey, and it's bad. It's real bad. First of all, I get nagged every single day to upgrade. More and more apps are no longer compatible. The apps that are compatible are starting to have weird bugs that are because I'm on Monterey. And it's not that old. You know? It's just... They can make great hardware. It just, at the end of the day, doesn't matter if these things don't get fixed. And to see them going this direction with Sequoia, it's really disappointing. It's like somebody at Apple... They need people outside of Apple using the products, giving them input or something, because the people inside Apple live in a very closed ecosystem with very specific, walls and parameters.
Yeah, the screen recording thing is interesting because it sounds like that would affect things like, I don't know, Zoom, right? I mean,
and anytime you do something like that, especially for something like Zoom, it introduces a moment for the user to screw it up, and then they can't participate in the call correctly because they didn't hit the right thing to authorize it,
It almost feels like there was probably some, nightmare case of God knows what, right? And now they're overcorrecting.
That was my first reaction too. Is they don't want us to know about it, but some app out there, probably even from the App Store, let's be honest, just was full up taking screenshots and recording people's screens and stealing information.
But the code signing and notarization stuff, it pretty much feels like it's just we want a opportunity to get that, beautiful 30%.
You know what would be actually useful AI integration into an operating system for real? How about an AI agent that analyzes my logs and analyzes my system metrics? And then not all the time, but from time to time as a system job, it looks through, and if there's an actual problem, hey, this one application seems to be using 1 gigabyte of your bandwidth. Do you want that? Or, hey, I noticed that I'm getting a lot of I/O errors in your log. That would actually be useful. But no, of course not. Instead, we got to generate me emojis. That's what we're spending the resources on.
That's what we're spending our time on. Now, speaking of that sweet 30%, tough day for Patreon creators.
Oh, man. And we'll get to it, but I think it's expanding from there. This really sucks. So Apple is requiring Patreon to now pay the 30% fee for in-app purchases of memberships. And because of this, essentially, Patreon is switching everyone that's new to Patreon to just a full-up membership program. And the reason why this came on my radar is a developer was complaining on Mastodon that this change is going to mess with their accounting, because the way it works now is, I guess, people get charged based on when they signed up. But now this is going to change when the users, the audience or the customer or the client, whatever, whenever they get charged, this changes, which means it changes when the creator gets paid, and it messes up accounting for him. And I was like, what is he talking about? And I started digging into this, and it turns out that, well, starting in November, Apple is going to start charging a 30% fee for new memberships that sign up in the Patreon iOS app. Patreon says that if it does not adopt the in-app purchase system for all iOS transactions, it risks being kicked out of the Apple App Store. So they're transitioning all customers to a membership-based system, or I guess all new customers, because of this. And if you have to buy it through the app, they're going to give you a screen where you can either take a cut, you can take a haircut as the creator, or you can choose the option to pass the cost on to the patron and increase their rate. That's their solution right now.
Boy, doesn't it just feel like Apple's really squeezing every penny?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, they're coming out after creatives and developers, right? That's the biggest audience. Those are the biggest people on Patreon, which is also sort of their core customer base. But I don't know if everything's Apple's fault here. First of all, what'd you expect? This seemed like it was kind of obvious this is the way it was always going to go. And I don't understand why Patreon has to switch everyone over to subscriptions just because of this. It feels like this is something Patreon's wanted to do anyways, and they're kind of using this as an opportunity cover. And then my other thought is why does Patreon need an app? Why can't it be a web app? Or why can't it be a progressive web app? Right? They don't have to alter the deal for all of their customers and all of their patrons, impact all future creators, impact all future patrons for this. They could just pull out and not have an app for a little bit because their app stinks anyways.
Oh, but you got to have an app. I mean, come on, man, right?
It's worth noting that Apple's 30% cut of Patreon subscriptions is going to be higher than Patreon's cut. Patreon takes like between 8 to 12% of membership subscriptions, and then there's payment processing fees in there as well. So it's a big cut altogether, but it's still not going to be the size of Apple's cut. So you got a Patreon 12% plus processing fees, and now Apple's 30% cut.
Ah, the glories of market power.
Can you believe this? That's like a 6x over what Patreon even gets.
Right, and this is just like free money for Apple, right?
Yeah, they're not doing anything except for facilitating the platform, I guess. I mean, this was really wild because it's on the back of creators and Patreon and developers.
Well, and what Apple's PR would say is, Apple is happy to provide Patreon and, by extension, its creators, an outlet to our large and wealthy customer base. Because remember, no matter what, app developers, they are Apple's customers in Apple's eyes, not
right.
yours.
Yes. Also, it sounds like Substack, they said they've been working with Apple to bring in-app purchases to their app, and Apple's going to be taking potentially a 30% cut from Substack subscriptions. So Apple will take 30%, Substack takes 10%, Stripe takes 3%, which means 43% cut goes to the platforms.
Something market power.
Can you believe this? I mean, 43%, Mike. And then, if you want to get technical about it, depending on where you live, you may have up to like 40, 50% taxes that then come out of that.
Yeah. And you have the actual expenses of like running your business, right?
Yeah.
So
if this stuff happens, we are about to watch a massive crunch on independent content creation and independent developers.
It's really this whole process since we started the show way back in 2012, right, has been, I think I got a little bit spicy years ago when I'm like, Apple and the related platforms are effectively turning developers into sharecroppers.
Yeah.
And that seems to be it, right? This is exactly how sharecropping used to work.
I'm not full panic mode because, there's time for these things to get turned around. Also, there's, potential antitrust in the future, and Apple's just getting itself more and more in the crosshairs with these kinds of things. So it's not all bad, but the mainstream media and large tech companies, they're all so, one note. And I think independent software and independent content, they bring such color and such variety to the ecosystem. Some of the best applications, some of the best content are from independent creators that just totally solely focus on that stuff. It'd be really sad to see that, because that has been growing. It's slowed for the last couple of years, but over the last 10 years, it's really exploded. But you start taking essentially 43% cut that goes to the platforms, and 30 to 40% that goes to taxes. Then the rest goes to business expenses. It just doesn't work. So I'll follow where this goes, but it's happening now for Patreon. Looks like Substack is in the process of negotiating with Apple. I would imagine any platform out there that is in these app stores that distributes that way, that is using these systems, these commercial proprietary systems to enable this, is going to run into these problems over time. I would imagine, at least.
And now it is time for Le Boost.
Which is, as I probably don't need to say, a big reason we are so thankful for our boosters. Thank you, everybody who boosted in. No middleman, no platform to take a cut. 100% of what you boost goes to where we split. Like, part of it goes to the Podcasting 2.0 project. Part of it goes to Editor Drew, the network, myself, and Mike. It comes in via splits out directly to the wallets. There's nobody that takes their cut in between. We get to set what the cuts are. And Daja comes in as a giant lobster baller booster this week. 305,000 sats.
Hey, rich lobster!
I think this big boost was really for you, Mr. Dominic. He says, let's give the man what he deserves. Hashtag Objective-C for Coder 2024. Making Objective-C the official language of the Koda Radio program, as it should be.
And I think we should just codify that and leave it right there forever. Objective-C.
And, as I promised, I had a song created to celebrate this.
Radio's official language. That's Objective-C's fate. Brackets and pointers, it's part of the game. You boosted, and now it's done. Objective-C is the king. Build apps so grand, make your code sing. All around the Xcode, the programmer did roam. He typed Objective-C and felt right at home. You boosted, and now it's done. Objective-C is the king. Build apps so grand, make your code sing. All around the Xcode, the programmer did roam. He typed Objective-C and felt right at home.
There you have it. Objective-C.
I love that the Objective-C song is something you might hear as the intro for a 80s
yes.
running a bar themed song, right? It's very Cheers.
I love that idea. I love that.
I'm going to need that MP3 file, of course.
Thank you, Daja. We really appreciate that. It is now official. Thank you very much. Bobby Pin also came in with a very generous 100,000 sats.
Hey, rich lobster!
He just wanted to say congrats on your year of being community funded. Here's to many more. Thank you, everyone.
Dankeschön.
Thank you. Hybrid Sarcasm comes in with 50,000 sats.
I hoard that which your kind covet.
Lovely Boo saying just showing some love to the Coder Gang. Thanks for consistently putting out such an enjoyable show.
Thanks for the epic username. That's good stuff.
Cospelin comes in with 2,100 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
Just to send a little value, no message. And Sam Squanch comes in and says, isn't AMD just as American as Intel with 10,000 sats?
Pew, pew, pew.
So, you're right. They're both, in fact, AMD was founded in California, right?
Oh, for some reason I thought they were from Taiwan. Well,
That's because they do all their manufacturing.
in Taiwan.
Yeah. And Intel has 3 plants in the United States.
Which apparently aren't going super.
Right. And a big one up in Oregon. I've been to their offices in Oregon. Now, AMD was supposed to be one of TSMC's customers at the new Arizona fab, but the new Arizona fab, I just looked it up. If you go look up TSMC Arizona, you'll discover that they're having quite a culture clash, and the operations aren't going very well.
Well, it's like that glorious joint project with Foxconn in, never mind.
Oh.
We don't talk about Wisconsin anymore.
No. Torso 19 comes in with 2,368 sats.
BOOST.
I want to send a boost after switching from Podverse to Fountain to try some of the Nostr integration. Hey, nice. Also, +1 to R as the show's official data science language. I like the subcategory idea. I still do like that.
Well, the R people know there's just not enough of them to really make a good coup against our Lord and Savior Objective-C.
I wonder, though, do they have enough clout to claim the number 2 position? We'll see. We'll see. But thank you for the boost, and if anybody else wants to support R, please do boost in. Adversary 17 comes in with 13,000 sats.
Put some macaroni and cheese on there, too.
Yeah, he said he liked that Ruby Jam. Hey, Mike, I'm looking to learn modern C++. It's just a side thing.
It's a hell of a side thing.
Do you have any recommendations where I'd start?
Yeah, I do. And this is the part where you go to my Amazon account in real time.
Right.
Because I forgot the name of the book.
All right, well, while you look, he says, I've dabbled in Rust. Yes, he says, apparently I hate myself a little bit. I've written a pretty featured .NET WPF app in C# for network troubleshooting at work. I just like coding as a hobby, and I want to get into more systems programming languages. Rust was fun for a while, but it got hard to make progress. So now, he wants to start in a modern C++ too.
So there is a book, and I've too many books I've purchased on Kindle about C++.
I can hear you scrolling over there.
Yeah, so I'm like, crap. It is called Modern C++. It's in color. That's how you know. It's very short. What it does is it basically gives you a walkthrough of features since I think C++ 20 that are, quote unquote, the better way to do things, right? The more modern way. I will attempt to find that and have that thrown in the show notes. I would also perhaps suggest, even though I'm sure you're a Linux guy, that Microsoft's modern C++ webpage is actually pretty good. Just ignore all the, Windows-specific stuff.
As one does.
Yeah. So also O'Reilly has a good book, but it's got that O'Reilly will put you to sleep factor. But that book is called Effective Modern C++. Actually, Scott Meyers, who's the author of that book, authored, I think, 2 others that are very good. Also, you might fall asleep. So there's that. I mean, if you just Google modern C++, there's a bunch of community GitHub projects people have made to kind of be like, this is how you use, magic auto pointers, right? This is whatever.
That could be a great way to go.
I think I have a couple blog posts that I wrote a couple years ago that might be helpful to you.
Also, shout out to anybody in the audience that has some solid recommendations. Yeah. Boost those in.
Yeah, it also kind of depends on what you're doing with it, right? So, if you're trying to do Unreal or games or something, there's a lot of good specific YouTube resources.
Like is often the answer, it depends on the angle of the dangle.
It doth depend, and if you are a Microsoft guy, I think it either is coming out or did just come out. There should be a new modern Visual C++ book or course coming soon, but I will have to check with the dude who told me about that. Assuming you're not a Microsoftie, I would say any of the C++ 20 books, modern C++, all good choices.
Thank you, Mr. 17. Appreciate that. Coach Rick comes in with 2,024 sats.
Good.
+1 for airlines still running on Windows 3.1.
Is that a +1? I'm not sure.
Well, Commander Adama would say so. You don't network the systems.
That's true. Commander Adama would be like, You bring me the thickest Ethernet cable, and we're just running that shit down the hallway. Let's go.
Just, yeah, peer-to-peer, nothing else. Just, right to the machine. Thank you, everybody who boosted in at the 2,000 sat cutoff or above. We do get all the boosts, and we appreciate them. We had 11 boosters and 17 streamers. Yeah, some people, they'll just stream us sats as they listen, too, which is pretty great. We stacked 29,063 sats via streaming. And in total, thanks to the great boost we had, we stacked 486,803 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
Thank you, everybody. That's some great support. As we do round out the year of being audience funded, it is really great to see the number stay up there a bit, just because that can be a tricky part of this. And also, we just really enjoy those interactions. If you'd like to boost, try it out. Links are in the show notes to Strike, which is a great, quick way to grab sats in over 100 countries, including the EU and the UK now, as well as Fountain. You can pair those two things together and boost in either with the app or Fountain's website. Get your message on the show. We'll give it a read. And it's a great way to support us at the amount and at the timing that you think is best. And you can also set it on autopilot by becoming a member at coder.show/membership. You can use the promo code SUMMER to take $1 off and get access to the ad-free version of the feed and the Coderly. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah. What do you think, Mr. Dominic? Is there anywhere you want to send people before we wrap up today?
You could find me on the Threads, although I'm really not using it much. I'm kind of taking Chris's detox too.
Yeah, it's nice, huh?
It is nice.
I did jump on Twitter last night to see how all the, shenanigans was going down with their big spaces, hoopla, but otherwise I try to stay off.
Yeah, I didn't. It was great. I went to sleep.
That is probably the better way to go.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess go to alice.dev. I'm way well behind on my online stuff other than the show. So
yeah,
I got to get back into it. I think
it's been a busy summer.
And this was the first day of school. Was
really?
Yesterday.
Oh,
so
wow.
I had a lot of last minute. They need a certain type of pencil because reasons.
Still a couple of weeks over here for my kiddos, which means they're around all the time.
Yeah.
So like last weekend, I had to just knock off, like this weekend that just passed. I had to knock off like a couple of must wins. Like I got my smoker fixed, had to do that. Washed the RV. Like I had to get that. So that way I could at least claim a few things that I only do really in summer. I did. But that's about it. Otherwise, it's just been nose to the grindstone or going on trips or whatever. It's just been this summer has gone by faster than any summer in my life. I can't believe your kid's already in school. That's just crazy to me. That means it's over It's over already, man.
It's over. That's all
right. I think I'm ready for Thanksgiving. I'm ready for pumpkins and fall weather. I'm ready. I can bring it. You know what? I'm good. I don't know if it ever really got even above 90 degrees here in Washington, but I'll be fine. Let us know how you're doing. Go to coder.show/contact, or you can reach out on the Nostr if you want to play around with something crazy. You can find my Nostr at ChrisLAS. You can find links to what we talked about today, because we got a whole bunch of links for what we talked about today over at coder.show/583. Once you're on that there website, you'll find our contact form as well as our RSS feed, so you can just get the show as we release it, but also links to things like our Matrix or our live chat. It's just got a lot of links. I'm probably almost as many links as it could take. We're probably almost maxed out, because it likes to put all of them at the top of the website. And if you're already on mobile, it's like it's already got to go in a hamburger menu. We're already at hamburger menu status. You know what I'm saying? So it's probably linked out. But there's a lot of them, and they're useful. You can also join us live on Mondays or Tuesdays, depending on when we're recording. Details at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Thanks for being here. See you next week.